This is Providence Television International, the game changer.
Torrential rain and flood hit Valencia region on Wednesday night, and millions flee their homes as suffering continues in Sudan. Good afternoon, thanks for joining us on the World News on Providence Television International. My name is Edna Caesar Garrick, and now the details. Floods and torrential rain returned to the Valencia region on Wednesday night, but this time they were ready for it, and the areas hit 2 weeks ago escaped further disaster. More than 220 people died in this eastern coastal area at the end of October, and the town of Porta was hit hardest with the loss of 60 lives. As the whole road became engulfed in water, the college co-director, Daniel Boget, repeatedly pounded against the door with a chair leg that he just picked up. Rebuilding Spain's shattered and traumatized communities will require an heroic effort that goes on for months. A fortnight after the worst flood to hit a single European country this century, Porta is still full of firefighters, police officers, and as well as the Red Cross and an army of daily volunteers. Although the vast majority of houses are still standing, there is a lack of electricity, hot or drinking water in the streets that were the worst hit. In Porta, piles of mangled cars have been created on ground about and at other places out of the way of traffic. It estimated as many as 100,000 cars were destroyed during the flood. The loss of possessions have been immense in the region. The loss of life crushing, and the trauma is not over. The mayor has urged people to stay inside as the local population awaits for the latest flood alert to subside. Monday's night Israeli airstrike on far northern corner of Lebanon killed at least 14 people, says Walid Seman, head of the Lebanese Red Cross Northern Branch. This was the second Israeli attack on Lebanon's northernmost governorate since Israel ramped up its deadly bombardment of Lebanon in late September. The previous hit a week before destroyed a bridge linking two remote villages in the mountainous region. Nobody was killed at that time around. At a nearby government hospital are 14 wounded expected to survive, with so many dead and multiple surrounding hope ripped apart. Residents here now fear they are no longer isolated from a war that has until now spared them. Since October last year, Israeli strike on Lebanon have killed about 3,300 people, the majority of them since Israel's onslaught escalated in September. More than 1.2 million people have fled their homes in these 2 months. Tens of thousands have taken refuge in schools converted into shelters. Others, however, have moved into vacant apartments in quieter areas of the country away from the front lines, including in mountainous Akka. But since Israel began its onslaught on Gaza, which triggered a near daily exchange of fire with Hezbollah across the border in Lebanon more than a year ago, that distance gave Akka a sense of relative safety. The war in Sudan is nearing the 2-year mark, and the enormous suffering of its people continues as two powerful armed rivals tear the country apart in what has been termed as existential battle. Millions have had to flee their homes, hundreds of thousands have been killed, and countless others are going hungry or being abused. On April 15, 2023, Sudan was plunged into conflict as long-standing tensions between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Hameti Gangalo erupted into war. More than half of all attacked 4,858 or 54% of all recorded incidents have been documented around the capital Khartoum. Sudan's army has in recent months launched a major offensive there to reclaim areas seized by the RSF at the beginning of the conflict. Gezira, Sudan's agricultural hub south of Khartoum, has seen 1,077 attacks, or about 12% of recorded incidents. Darfur, a western region divided into 5 states, and its people have long suffered from internal conflict. In North Darfur, there were at least 818 attacks, or 9% of all recorded incidents. Reports say at least 24,000 people have been reported killed across Sudan, though the actual death toll is likely much higher, especially one counting for direct deaths such as the spread of disease, malnutrition, and lack of adequate health care. If you are just joining us, this is the World News on Providence Television International. A car attack that killed 35 people in China has sparked question about a recent spate of public violence as officials continue to censor decision on the incident. Police said the driver who plunged into a crowd at a stadium in the southern city of Zhuhai on Monday night acted out of unhappiness over a divorce settlement. While it is believed to be China's deadliest known act of violence in decades, it follows a string of attacks in recent months, including a stabbing spree at a Shanghai supermarket and a knife attack at a Beijing school. Amid a national outcry over the Zhuhai incident, President Xi Jinping has vowed severe punishment for the perpetrator. Police say the 62-year-old driver who has been arrested is in a coma due to self-inflicted wounds. A number of violent attacks in China have been reported this year, including a mass stabbing and firearms attack in Shandong in February, which killed at least 21 people. In October, a knife attack at a top school in Beijing injured 5 people, while in September, a man went on a stabbing spree at a supermarket in Shanghai, killing 3 people and injuring several others. Away from the foreign scene now, back home, Edo State Governor Senator Mondo Okpebholo has approved the dissolution of the executive of all boards, agencies and parastatals in the state public service with immediate effect. In a statement on Wednesday by his Chief Press Secretary, Mr. Fred Itwa, the governor ordered all affected appointees to hand over all government properties in their possession to the most senior public officers in their respective ministries, departments, and agencies. The directive affected all appointed permanent secretaries from outside the state public civil service, while all political appointees are relieved of their appointment with immediate effect. The governor also ordered the immediate and indefinite suspension of the collection of all revenues in Edo State, especially in motor parks. The federal government has been urged to seek alternative sources of power generation in a bid to stabilize electricity distribution in the country. The call was made by one-time top managerial staff of the Nigeria Electric Power Authority, Engineer Prince Charles Eweka, during an exclusive interview on Providence Television International. Engineer Eweka stressed the need for rural electrification, noting that the burden will be lessened on the national grid if alternate sources of power generation are utilized. He further stated that electric power generation is not the sole responsibility of the federal or state government and called on corporate organizations to invest in alternate sources of power generation and distribution.
We must divest the expansion of the power industry to even the local government level, because the federal government cannot do it alone. There is nothing stopping local governments from doing rural electrification.
What method or methodology would they use?
Very good. Now, solar power is gaining ground.
The body of the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja, has arrived at the Nigerian Air Force wing of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. The body, which was received by soldiers of the Guard Brigade who were set to pay their last respect to Lagbaja, arrived at exactly 9 a.m. today. On Tuesday, 12th November, President Bola Tinubu ordered a state burial for the late Chief of Army Staff. With that, we've come to the end of the world news. But before we go, let's take a look at some top stories that made headlines. We brought you the report from China. We say a car attack that killed 35 people in China has sparked questions about a recent spate of public violence as officials continue to censor discussion on the incident. Police said the driver who plunged into crowd at a stadium in the southern city of Zhuhai on Monday night acted out of unhappiness over a divorce settlement. And also, the war in Sudan is nearing the 2-year mark, and the enormous suffering of the people continues as two powerful armed rivals tear the country apart in what has been termed as existential battle. Millions have had to flee their homes, hundreds of thousands have been killed, and countless others are going hungry or being abused. And finally, floods and torrential rain returned to the Valencia region Wednesday night, but this time they were ready for it, and the areas hit 2 weeks ago escaped further disaster. More than 220 people died in this eastern coastal area at the end of October, and the town of Parpota was hit hardest with the loss of 60 lives. Thanks for watching. Edna Sazagarik is my name. Good afternoon.